We have one hell of a guest that I think will do a lot of the talking and will give us some good moments. Ladies and gentlemen, Kill Tony's Karen Jones. Karen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. And, it would have been nice if we could have had the other host, but one on one is actually, the very best.
Yeah, Trey, I don't know how to best describe him, but he's a guy with Aspergers that has no filter. So I felt like you two could have bantered off each other pretty well, but maybe next time. Next time you'll be on when Trey's in the building for sure.
Well, and I would be interested in how he feels about Asperger's being dropped as an official diagnosis.
Is it? Has it?
Yes, they no longer have Asperger's, they just have the spectrum of autism. In a former life, I worked as a psychiatric technician, so I still stay abreast of different DSM, the diagnostic criteria manual stuff. And Asperger's is now one for the history books. I still
So
use it.
so what is Is Asperger's just on its own now, or what is it?
Well, Asperger's was referring to a high functioning, living in the community, independent autistic person, where the people that were diagnosed with autism were literally, single digit IQ, rocking in a back ward of a mental hospital, a state mental hospital. And, they had some higher functioning ones, like also somebody like Rain Man, the movie,
Yeah.
those idiot savants. They're certainly a very limited number. It's a very special thing to be an idiot savant. But that was autism that was hospitalized. Then whatever caused all these people to start being just kind of strange and tiptoey, and maybe vax induced autism is a horse of a different color. So your description of Trey having Asperger's, that's just what we used to call like a nerd.
He is a big, big nerd. I will say that for sure. If you guys aren't familiar with Miss Karen Jones here, she is a Kill Tony icon. She's been on the show 5 different times, and every time, Karen, you start speaking, I feel like I learn more about you and what you have done in a past life. How many different jobs have you had in your life?
Remarkably few. The first job I ever had was as a motel maid when I was 15. And I was staying the summer with an uncle up there. And so that was my first grown up job. Then I found myself shortly thereafter 15 pregnant and kicked out of school. You weren't allowed to be pregnant when you went to school back in the olden days.
Mhm.
So I ended up in a Salvation Army home for unwed mothers and got my GED in Berkeley at a skills center. And then from there, went to vocational school and became a psychiatric technician. So I worked at a county hospital on the emergency psych ward, spent a little time at a state hospital, then a private locked psych hospital. So that's three. Then I moved to drunk driving, teaching at a drunk driving school. And I did that for the last decade of my employment. After that, I decided to be a full time stay at home mom, because that sounds like a lifetime. But at that time, I'm in my very early 30s and decided, well, the drunk driving school job actually happened because I was the only girl in my drunk driving class. And that was embarrassing, but I was also pregnant, which made it additionally embarrassing. This is in 82. So
Yeah.
I asked the people who were the counselors, the people who worked at the school, hey, how do I get a job here? And they said 2 years sobriety. And I'm like, hey, I'm already 3 months sober after I wrecked my car pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant. I found out having my stitches removed. Said, hey, I haven't had a period since the wreck. Can you do the rabbit test? I was pregnant. So by the time it wound through the courts and all the bureaucracy of drinking and driving, I was then the pregnant girl in my drunk driving class. But I stopped drinking as soon as I wrecked my car drunk. I had been an unmarried single mom and my son was 4 at this time, and I was living with the greatest guy. I couldn't believe that I finally, met a great guy, great protector and provider. And the minute he walked in my hospital room after the wreck, I said, I'm never drinking again. I did not want to risk losing something that's so hard to come by. So anyway, after 2 years of not drinking, then I went back, applied at the drunk driving school, worked part-time at a mental hospital, and part-time at the drunk driving school. But then in 95, I moved to the town where my husband was born, Santa Ynez, California. And the pay wasn't good enough to work. And I decided just to be, the poor one income family raising my younger 2 kids there.
I felt like I was Tony there for a second. I felt like I got like a million different questions as you started talking. Talk to me about that drunk driving school. I want to hear about what they thought when the pregnant lady who was in the class decided, "Oh, I want to come back and teach this class." And any crazy people in that class and any wild stories from there.
Well, it was interesting. It was a variety of people who worked there, but a good number of them were recovering people. I came from, the mental health background in work, and they had people there that were, masters in social work or marriage family counselor people working there. But they also had a fair number of recovering addicts as well. And then we had a different group of people working there that were off-duty police officers for extra money. And it was a driving school that did regular driving classes for people who got tickets, not related to alcohol. And then we were the only drunk driving program this was in Bakersfield. And so the people that were there in recovery thought that made perfect sense. And then I ran into them again at some continuing education classes. And I would always say, hey, I've got this much sobriety. I'm coming to apply. And in my interview, the people with the psych background, the boss, the director of the school, wanted to know my counseling experience, my mental health experience. And not everyone in the room, they did a group interview of all the employees, knew that I had been there. And so I said, this is a good time for me to say that I actually went through your program as a first time offender. And I was the only woman and I was pregnant. And the addicts in the room applauded and they said, yay, finally some real qualifications.
When you were, drinking heavily and then you decided to get sober, what was other than obviously you said losing your husband, but did you go to like any AA meetings or anything like that? Was the drive to get sober difficult for you?
Well, I had a little bit of an advantage over most people, being that I lived in California. You've all heard of Cali sober. The booze thing, I wasn't a very heavy drinker at that point. I was an alcohol abuser because I was so young. I was at that time, I was 23 years old. And when I got drunk, I got too drunk. I had very little control over my drinking as far as once I started. I wasn't, waking up in the morning with shaking hands or needing to drink. I was still mainly a pot smoker. Booze was, you can't light up a joint at the office party or when you go out after work. So I was starting to drink more as I hit 21. Actually, I didn't drink a whole lot before 21. So I only had a couple of years of really screwing up with my drinking. Not saying I didn't do it. I did it. I probably blew it almost every time I did drink. I had no governor on me.
Mhm.
So, it would always end with me doing stupid stuff like fighting with my husband. And the night I got that DUI, we had went out to dinner with my parents and, had wine with dinner. And I didn't seem that effed up at that time. But I got home and started rifling through for whatever booze was around the house. Because once I got started, and I wanted my husband to keep the party going, he just wanted to go to bed. And I was telling him how unfun he was and what a wet blanket. And, you never let me do anything fun. And So anyway, I put my guitar in the car and drove to a town about 30 miles away where an old partner that I used to play with lived. And he wasn't a boyfriend, but he was a boy friend. So it's
Hmm.
not cool. And I wasn't married to my husband yet. We were living together. And so it's pretty uncool for me to drive like at 11 o'clock at night drunk to this person's house to play guitar because he was fun and my husband wasn't fun. Anyway, when I became aware of what I was doing, like I blacked out for a while there. I don't remember playing the guitar. My musician friend told me later that all of a sudden I just said, oh, "Where am I? Oh my
Oh
God,
no.
I've got to leave. My husband is going to be so pissed." And I grabbed my guitar, threw it in the trunk, and took off. And this friend lived on an oil lease, and I just missed a curve and went off an incline and rolled my car. And so I got injured, not in a life-threatening way, but in a way that resulted in me going to the hospital and having my blood drawn. And I had a pretty high blood alcohol level. It was over 2. And so anyway, it was a crazy thing. So I was not only apologizing for being drunk and for being drunk and fighting with my future husband. I was apologizing because you don't get drunk, storm out, and I'm going to go see somebody who's fun. I can tell my husband that that guy and I never had a sexual relationship, but you know how it is. You're a guy. You
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
believe a woman if she told you that.
100% no way. You grabbed the guitar. That's
Yeah.
romantic. I'm not gonna believe
Yes.
that. How long have you and your husband been together now?
Well, we had our 43rd wedding anniversary just a few days ago on the 17th of August. And we always joke because we never celebrate it. We got married, after that drunk driving wreck, and I was pregnant. It's like, okay, well, let's get married. And he after work, and he'd come home from work. I don't feel like it tonight. So finally, just the 17th, we went to a little marriage chapel in Bakersfield. So no wedding. We had a marriage, not a wedding. It's probably why we're still married.
Hmm.
Stay away from weddings, folks. Get married, don't have weddings. But we've been living together then a little over 3 years before then. So, we've been together. I have not had sex with another man for over 46 years.
Hell yeah, love to hear that, Garrett Jones. Well, we're off to a hot start learning a lot about you. But let's transition from the I guess the 70s or the 80s to to some modern time here. You were at Madison Square Garden for the latest Kill Tony. What was that experience like? And is this your first arena show for Kill Tony?
I have been to every arena show
Oh,
except for London. I had wanted to go to London, but expensive, and I didn't even have a driver's license at that point. Just because it's crazy, but you can when you're me, you can blame everything on the federal government. But I managed to go to all the Kill Tony arena shows. The first one was at the HEB Center in Austin, 2 shows.
hmm.
Then the next one was LA at the they call it now the Kia Forum and the YouTube Theater. And then I went to 2 shows in Nashville in April. And then this one, Madison Square Garden last year, then Nashville, then back to Madison Square Garden. And I do it for Joke Wrld. I accidentally did it at the first HEB one, meaning my son talks to Jake from Joke Wrld. And my son handed me a pink microphone and had me stand somewhere and he
Classic.
asked me questions. And then that got edited into Jake asking the questions as covering the show. So after that, I just kept doing it. And Joke Wrld, I don't know if you ever watch them, but they're great. And I love the way the owner has such a positive, upbeat spin because there's so much shit talking. And I love shit talking. It's fun to put stuff down, but it's good to have a news source that covers comedy and all different kinds, not just Kill Tony, in a way that promotes comedy because it's where it's at now. Comedy is the new uh, live music as far as popularity and where people are going to have their brain stimulated.
How did you kind of get involved with Joke World, and what exactly is your role with him when you go to these Kill Tony shows?
I am the senior Joke World correspondent, and senior meaning I'm a senior citizen. I have the most camera time of any correspondent. I don't know if he's ever used anyone else. My son, actually, um, when Jake was still living in Florida and he needed somebody to grab something from Kill Tony, my son and I started this podcast. I guess you could call it a podcast, Kill Alley, where my son was interviewing people in the alley where we used to wait to sign up for Kill Tony. It was the alley behind Rogan's mothership.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel so lucky to have been there. I started from day one, first Kill Tony at the mothership, whereas my son had been going to the Vulcan for a few months. He was having marriage problems. He was a Kill Tony fan. We were all Joe Rogan, Kill Tony fans. So my son was in pretty deep as a fan. And he started going to the Vulcan. He never got pulled there. He did eventually get pulled a little after me at the mothership Kill Tony. But that alley was so special. And we've moved a couple times since then to where our holding pin is. But that alley was so wild. The black market in District 12, that's what the alley looked like. There were just all these downtrodden, kind of scraggly, hungry, dirty people, comics, as we like to call them. And they set up barbecues, ice chests, pop-ups. You could buy any drug, any booze, get hot dogs and hamburgers. It just turned into quite a carnival until finally we were ordered out. I think probably some of the mothership's neighbors that shared that street did not dig. They were happy to have Joe Rogan come in and
Mm-hmm.
bring that coolness and that energy to that block of 6th Street. But then once they got that benefit, they didn't like, this is just me speculating, the
Mm-hmm.
price that came with it, which is having a bunch of comics clogging up your alley every Monday night. And I still have all the original footage. That's where, we got to talk to Cam Patterson before he was famous, Drew Nickens, Heath, Cortez, you name it. We met all these people as they were arriving, people coming from every state and in some cases other countries. So it was fun, us all hanging out, and it that all ended the first year, so that'd be 23 in probably late June. So we had 3 or 4 months in the alley before they put us in the bar called Shakespeare's. Then they moved us to a bar across the street called Poor Choices. And eventually we got to come back to Shakespeare's to wait. And we love Shakespeare's, the best of the holding pins. But man, the stench and the sweat and the freedom of
Oh,
that alley was like something I have never experienced anywhere. And it was a fun thing to be a part of. One of the neat things about doing Kill Alley, even through us moving to Shakespeare's, my son and I were the only ones allowed out the back door to Rogan's back door so we could interview people as they exited. There were other
that's
people
cool.
doing that, but they had to wait in the bar. Like my son, who is ironically and comically named Alex Jones,
Oh, I
he's,
remember him on the show. Okay,
yes,
yeah.
well, he is a almost cartoonishly handsome fellow, and he's very nice. And so he got he had advantages, got treatment that other people didn't, as far as access to the back door of the mothership. So that was the first part of it, um, alley, and then early Shakespeare's, getting those first out the door big book interviews. And we also got the people that bombed, and some of the people who bombed are, a lot of them are good people, good comics, but there's so much that goes into how you do, and material and preparation obviously are biggies, but who's at the table, Tony's frame of mind, what kind of audience is in there, because I have deservedly bombed hardcore once. I have, should that have been a bomb? It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but I was prepared, and the table and the room just wasn't good for me. And then the other three appearances that I felt good about, there's just a lot that goes into it. So we'd see people that would come out. One guy in particular, Dylan, I don't remember his last name now. I'll mess it up. It's Italian if I try and say it. But he got booed off the stage. And he was a working New York comic who moved to Austin. He's a funny guy, but his banter with Tony didn't go well. And it's always important to remember that it's Tony Hinchcliffe's show, and he built that. And so to say F you, Tony, or F you to the audience is probably not ever going to be a winner.
No. And you are probably one of the best at the interview to ever come onto the show. When you first came on to Kill Tony, was that your major focus? Obviously, the minute is the key. But when you came in, were you like, okay, I'm gonna talk about being invited to the Capitol and going into that story and making sure that that's the main focus, or what was your mindset the first time you stepped on the stage?
Well, I've been working on my minute because, it was almost 20 signups before I got pulled, which is nothing for some people. I mean, a lot of people have signed up 100 times and not been pulled. But so I had 20 weeks of rehearsing and timing my minute, and it wasn't as good in my practice as it was that night because I luckily ran into this crazy lady wearing a hot pink cape and just a
Hmm.
character, and she had "pussy is the new dick" on her t-shirt.
So I get here tonight, and there's this lady walking around in a pink getup, and her T-shirt says, "Pussy is the new dick," which was news to me because I thought Karen was the new dick. They have replaced Dick with Karen. Yay, girls, girl power! Thank you.
So that ended up being my opening because you've got to have a strong opening line, and I didn't really have one yet. I was going to talk about Karen being the new dick, but her thing on her shirt allowed me to say, I saw this lady who said pussy is a new dick, but I'm pretty sure Karen's the new dick. And then I was
Hmm.
able to go
Yeah.
into my minute and about how, women's lib has messed stuff up. But my intention the whole time, and this is something that has never been made clear while I'm on the show, um, the reason I wanted to sign up was because I wanted to tell my J6 story. But once
Gotcha.
I got pulled, and I've got Theo Vaughn and Tony Hinchcliffe, and I've never done stand up before, and I'm in Joe Rogan's mothership. I'd been in viewing it the second week we were there. We wanted to see what the show was like on the inside, but mostly we like being in the alley. And my whole reason for doing this was to talk about J6. So I did my drunk driving school, and yeah, I never have anal sex. I don't have sex anymore talk. And then Tony said, you're great. We love you. Probably the best first time ever. And I'm saying all these compliments he gave me, but I am not convinced that he and Theo had not done mushrooms or Molly or something, because they were really emitting that loving vibe um,
Hmm.
that we've all seen when friends were partying on that stuff. Maybe they were just really happy. I don't know. But he tossed me the big joke. I caught it. And I said, but you still haven't even found out the most interesting thing about me.
Yeah.
And
Final thoughts.
we did not even get to the most interesting thing about
All
me.
right, stop.
My local newspaper ran a story just before Thanksgiving accusing me of being a white supremacist terrorist.
Because it took me 20 weeks to get up there. I wasn't going to leave without talking about J6. So then it turned into a guessing game what the most interesting thing was about me. And then when Tony found out that I had been at J6, he was just over the moon excited. And then when he found out I had actually been in the building, then he had to keep talking to me. There is some controversy now just among me and my friends. Okay. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal beyond that. But I remain the longest continuous interview. My friend Alex, who I can't say his last name because I love him, but I met him as inbred retard. He started going by Aaron Rodgers. When I asked what his real name was, it's Aaron Rodgers, and he publishes books under Aaron Rodgers. He finally, after a year plus of signing up, gets pulled, and they call the name. They come into the bar, and on the mic they call the name of who the next bucket pull is, and it's Alex Tar something,
Oh,
and
Tarchoun. Yeah.
yeah, I had no idea who that was. And then I see Inbred Richard, AKA Hawking. And I'm like, I already pretty much suspected his name was Alex because he tried to force me on a phone call with his brother one time. It's like, I really want you to meet my brother. And so he's got us on speakerphone saying, I really want you to meet this person. And the guy on the other end, the brother, is like, Alex, I've told you not to call me at dinner time. And he's like, yeah, but I really want you to, Alex, don't call me at dinner. And so after I said, is your name really Alex? And he blushed. But he didn't think, oh, yeah, my name is really this. Anyway, but he is a good friend of mine. And the morning after he went up, he called me and he said, how long was your interview? And I already knew that he had been up a long time and that he had done well, because to answer your question, as you see, I am not only a long goodbyer, I am a long question answerer. I am
Uh,
I talk too much. So anyway, I knew Alex had done really well that night, but then it became who had the longer interview. He had more interview minutes, but I had the longest interview from start to finish. So, and either way, I have the longest female interview for sure, without a doubt.
so that was your first time ever doing stand-up comedy. When you have that much success, was it easy for you to just decide this is something I'm gonna start doing? And how much sooner did you decide I'm gonna do comedy after this? When did you hit your next open mic?
Well, it I already had decided I was going to do it before I got called, but I had very little opportunity to do open mics other than wall at the early days. Once we got moved to Shakespeare's, they had a minute mic. It's a huge bar, 2 stories,
Hmm.
and in one corner you could practice your minute. So there was that, and then I had a couple of coffee shop opportunities, but I was being investigated by the FBI. Then I had free trial probation where you get drug tested, any contact with police, you have to go and get drug tested and get interrogated. It's kind of like after you've been convicted, even before. And so I hated going to downtown Austin to do open mics, and there weren't any. My son. Whoa, that was kind of like an Oedipus slip. If you're editing things out, make sure to leave that in because that makes
Yeah.
us both look fucked up. Anyway, my son was living in Dripping Springs, and so I was like 45 minutes away, and I just did not like inviting the trouble. I had my car towed one time at a Kill Tony. I had a dog bite incident happen at the house. I had to report to probation and the police. So when you're under that much scrutiny, I didn't get out much. So that's what's really exciting. And you have to be careful what you talk about, um, which I wasn't as careful as my lawyer wanted me to be. But once I realized that I was not going to be able to fight the fake charges against me, um, I didn't mind getting in a little trouble because I knew I was going plea deal. So the most time I would probably end up getting was a year. So I was willing to risk a year in prison to get the truth out because the
Hmm.
people that fought the charges were in prison for 4 years in really ugly situation, especially those of us that are unvaxxed.
Yeah.
It was really rough for those people. So I didn't mind risking getting a full year of pleading guilty to a misdemeanor. And the worst they could do, they could put me in jail and do different combinations of punishment on me. But I needed people to know, and not just people, but nonpartisan people, because the Democrats all knew I was an insurrectionist. They're sticking to that. The Republicans slowly but surely came to the conclusion it was an entrapment. But
Yeah.
then there's that 40% of people in the middle that barely paid attention to it at all. And that was my target audience. Because once the normies realized that the government used their full force to go after political opposition, that would give Trump the political capital to exonerate us. So that I had a big plan. I'm a little nobody with a big plan, but I was just trying to do my part and have fun. Like if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't have been doing this on a soapbox in the middle of a nonpartisan crowd. It's fun to do comedy, and I love trying new things. I love being in an interesting place. That's kind of why I was at January 6th.
So when you started doing comedy, how often were you doing it? And did it kind of give you more confidence heading into this open mic when you've gotten so much praise on a national scale like Kill Tony? And do people recognize you at these open mics and come up to you and talk to you? And what is that experience like?
I would say comedians are kind of a strange bunch in the sense that they're a very tough audience, and
Mhm.
it's unusual to have comedians for fans when you're a comedian. It's it's kind of like lining up to run a race. I've been around track and cross country. I've been around sports a lot because I have boys, and there's kind of that vibe, game face, a little bit
Yeah,
of trash
competitive.
talking. Yeah, you're into sports as well. I
Yeah.
see, and so that's kind of the deal with the comedians. And I don't think it helps me that I'm so popular with the fans. Like other people who have been on a lot will be standing in line or walking to the club. And I get a lot more requests to have pictures taken with me.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, and it's because, I am an outlier in this world. Everybody else, like the comedians all fit a certain mold. Ben, the old guy that did heroin, that guy, he's older demographic.
Hold on,
I,
before you keep going, I gotta ask. You guys were on the same episode, you and Ben Greeley, who did the heroin. Have you guys ever interacted or talked? Because you guys are like cut from the same cloth, and I love you guys both, and that was one of my favorite moments all last month.
well, the comment section hated it. It's like those old people are boring. It's bad enough having to listen to one. But Ben and I are friends. He's older
Yeah.
than me and never been a heroin addict. Like he lived a much rougher life than me, but we are definitely friendly. He doesn't have a great memory. And one night we really hung out with him when my family was out here visiting and friends. And the next day, one of the friends took an Uber to the airport. And when he got home back to LA, he called and said, the old dude that we were talking to for so long last night was my Uber driver. And he gave me all the same spiel in the car and then handed me a sticker. So Ben's memory isn't great. His remote memory is quite excellent, but he is older and he has done a lot of hard drugs. And
Hmm.
but I like him, and we definitely always say hi to each other. I also see that you're a big fan of Sir Winston Pickles,
Great
and
guy.
I got to know him in Nashville as much as you can know him. One thing that's interesting about Sir Pickles is all the makeup, the stage name, and I think he may be wanted in several states because he will give no personal information at all. I interviewed him for Joke Wrld, and he stayed 100% in character, and he's very vague about where he's been or how he got to the United States. I don't know if he's worried about ice, but he is a smart guy. I was pleased the first time he went up that he was funny, because a lot of people who rely on costumes or any kind of prop humor, you know, I probably shouldn't say it, but I'm not even a Carrot Top fan. Like prop
Yeah.
humor, it's just not my thing.
And I said this in the last review I dropped yesterday. I think he is a guy that has such good jokes. Even if he wasn't in the clown garb, I think he'd be successful just based on the kind of jokes he tells. But the fact that they're so twisted and that he is in the clown garb, it raises him up a level, is where I'm at with Sir Winston Pickles. Has he been a guy that's been signing up a lot and just has not gotten the opportunity? You've seen him around quite a bit.
Just recently, I don't know that he had been to anything. I'd never seen him, and guys like him stand out. He hadn't
Yeah.
been to any arena shows. He hadn't been in Austin. So the first time I saw him, I talked to him in Nashville, and we talked. I've got a long recording of it. Once again, I have so much video of all these people.
Yeah.
Someday it will be a documentary. All I need to do is either find a smart young man or get smart myself, tech wise. But I've got a lot of footage of him, and we talked a lot, and he is very evasive. But I caught most of your recap, and so I know you like Pickles. I also found on that recap interesting about the bombs, because two of the bombs are people I know. One was Micah, and who was the other one that bombed?
Oh yeah, Micah Brown. I think that might have been 2 episodes ago. There was a guy in
Oh,
this
okay.
last episode. This last episode, his name was Dave the Butcher, and it was like iconically bad, where he was like, I can't see anything, and he was trying to get the crowd to say who's there to a knock knock joke, and they booed him. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh, wow. There's very little booing that happens at the mothership. So if you get booed at the
Yeah.
mothership, it's bad news.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think as a viewer of the show, I'm sure going to the arena shows is great, and I'm sure that's like a real all-time experience as a Kill Tony fan. But watching it, I think that's kind of what takes it away, because you get so many people who are just there at the arena show that want to cross it off the bucket list. They want to get on the stage. It's their first time doing comedy, and all these fans really aren't afraid to boo. Do you kind of feel that same way? And how was this Madison Square Garden show? Not sure how much you can share before it's released, but what did you think about that?
I have watched the evolution of Kill Tony from its moving from the Vulcan to the mothership and arena shows and the Netflix contract. One thing Tony announced, I also went to Killers of Kill Tony Friday night, because he only did one arena show that was Kill Tony on Saturday night. Friday night, he did Killers of Kill Tony. And it was a really cool show. Very, like, a lot of the regulars were working out some of their stuff for the next night. There were no duplicate sets, but they were just kind of doing almost a dress rehearsal in a sense. But Tony got up there and did his stuff, and I've seen him. I saw Tony at the Arlington Theater in Santa Barbara a decade ago, opening for Joe Rogan. Like, I didn't know who he was then. I wasn't. Kill Tony was so small, I wasn't into it then. And when you're excited to see Joe Rogan, like, ah, shit, he's got some opening act. Ugh, okay, well, we can get through this. And he was so funny. It's nice when an opening act ends up being great. So
Yeah.
anyway, this past Friday night, Tony was really reflecting. He was funny, but it was there was something very real about his set on Friday night before the Kill Tony Arena show. And one thing that he did disclose, and I believe it's common knowledge now, is that he has just re-signed with Netflix. He's had a 3 deal Netflix thing. And when that
Yeah.
happened, this is the evolution. I really saw a lot of changes happening. That goes back to the arena show at the Forum when there were first rumors that there was a Netflix deal in the works for Tony. A lot of people booed that. People,
Mhm.
a lot of people didn't like it. And even among the comedians, I kept saying anything good for Tony Hinchcliffe and Kill Tony is going to be good for us. Like it makes us and puts us in front of a bigger audience by far, as big as Tony is on YouTube. Netflix is huge. So it was just really interesting getting to hear that. That was the first time I heard it about the 12 deal, 12 show, 3-year, 12 shows. So it's going to be
12
quarterly.
shows.
But I can see, being a California gal that is coast in Southern California, and have a lot of friends who work in the entertainment industry. I could see the development happening real time, where they started vetting the people signing up. They started, something I was always amazed that they let people wear logos on their shirts. And I've worked as an extra on many, many films. And, first thing, and TV shows, I've done enough stuff that that's just, being filmed 101, no logos. So that was always a surprise to me. But Tony started getting a lot more um, Hollywood, whatever. The rules of the game definitely got more professional.
Before we get back to comedy, you saying that you were an extra on any show. Is there any popular shows that we can look at and pause and see Karen Jones in the background?
Well, probably the most popular one, and I like to think that I took this from being a good movie to an Academy Award winner with my 3-second face,
Mhm.
is Sideways, the wine movie. Alexander Payne made the movie, and anyway, it's just a buddy film, travel to the wine country. So it's filmed in the town where my home is, my real
Mhm.
home, Santa Ynez. I love Texas, but I mean, my my home where my heart is in Santa Ynez. So as Miles and Jack are walking in for their first wine tasting at the hitching post, I am one of two extras exiting. So
Wow.
um, I don't know if you would recognize me or not, because I wanted to look like an old woman, not elderly, but this was 20 years ago. So I put on a twin set sweater and put my hair in a bun and put on my squarest glasses. But you definitely can can see me walking out. Now you see a little bit more of me in the Atlas Shrugged trilogy of the early teens. Those were not big hits. They were almost like an angel film kind of thing, kind of like a Daily Wire, you know, one of those kind of movies. But it was fun because I did make the trivia of being the only person in all three movies besides the production team. Um, so anyway, and I just did that. It was so funny. I'm a huge Ayn Rand fan. My parents were, and I just grew up in the shadow of the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and very, objectivist philosophy of my parents.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to be affiliated with the movies, and I was throwing an Ayn Rand birthday party, as I typically do on Groundhog's Day, for my tea bag friends. The
That's
tea partiers. I was very involved in organizing tea parties back in the early days of the Obamacare stuff, and so I would get a cake and invite friends to the restaurant bar across the street from my house for Ayn Rand's birthday. And one of the gals who didn't know who she was, but was involved in organizing tea parties, she said, I think my brother-in-law is making some movie about a book of hers.
yeah.
Boom. Now all of a sudden I got my connection and I'm in. So it was so fun driving down. They were filmed maybe about 1 to 2 years apart. And
Mhm.
they didn't do very well for a few reasons, but part of it is timing. Like watching them now, they so-called, what's happening, like a lot of dystopian type movies, books do. But the other thing that I think they had problems just because they changed the cast for every movie. But they had some big actors in all three. But anyway, there's that. Now, one of the most well-known movies I'm in that I didn't have a line was it's a movie called The Lottery, and it was
Oh,
required viewing in colleges through most of my childhood and young adult life. But the story is every year the town has a lottery where they stone one child to death. So, the crops will be good. And it's not like some Aztec tribe. This is like, a kind of a Midwest looking town. And growing up, I lived in a town that was a little over about an hour and a half from Los Angeles. And it is a dusty oil field town that was great when Hollywood needed to film movies about poor people or, anything that just looked like the Rust Belt. So a lot of movies were filmed there. So I had a lot of filming, extra opportunities living there. When I was a really little kid, I got to be on the set. I wasn't an extra, but I was on the set of Five Easy Pieces, the Jack Nicholson movie. So,
that's cool.
yeah, I've been around a lot of cool stuff like that. I was on a game show done by the Newlyweds, the Newlywed Show,
You were on the
and
Newlywed
the
Game?
dating game. No, no, but same
Oh,
producer, and it was called The Family Game. Bob Barker was a host,
oh,
and
sweet.
yeah, I did really good. I was a little kid. I was in summer before fourth grade, and we came in last place. But I mean, Bob Barker said our family was the funniest family he remembered. That's another thing about me in stand-up comedy. All through school, I had to put my desk in the hallway because I thought I was a comedian.
Yeah.
Everybody that I hang around with is funny. My father was such a tough audience. He was so funny. Everybody I've been around my whole life is funny.
People often talk about the Kill Tony bump. When you were first on the show or any of your appearances, what did you kind of, notice anything in your life change? Did you get a lot of messages? And what were some of the craziest interactions or messages that you got from Kill Tony fans?
Well, this is something that sets me apart from other Kill Tony people is I was convinced to make an Instagram account because I had no social media at all.
Hmm.
And I just don't even know how to use it. Sometimes I'll try and share a story about me or I'll try and do a post, but I have such disdain for Mark Zuckerberg, and not just him, it's really Facebook. Chris Hughes was a big part of implementing what became the manipulation of social media and censorship and the destruction of free speech. So I have this rule that I only sleep with the enemy to gather intelligence or kill them. I don't want to be involved with anything Facebook, Instagram, but I ran my friend I had a really good friend that passed away last year, Kinky Friedman, and he's a Texas icon, humorist, mystery writer. He did a lot of interesting things. But I would ranch sit for him in Hill Country when he toured. So I was already familiar with Hill Country. But as far as getting a bump, it was more friends were happy for me, and my Kill Tony super fan friends all contacted me and people follow me on Instagram, but I don't even know what to do with it. The
Hmm.
day after Trump was elected, I felt safe enough to do an X account. Back in the day, really the only social media I did was uh, it was called Twitter then, and it had already started the deep state lockdowns. Like I was getting suspended like almost every day the last year I was on Twitter, but it was X when I re signed up for it the day after the election. And, I've only got, 1,000 or 1,500 followers. And I generally follow people back. Like I'm not a snob. If you're a bot or or a sedition hunter, or, then I don't follow you back. But I love the interaction. And I know there's a certain amount of um, censorship on all the platforms. And when Elon Musk bought Twitter, I said, I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy, but right now he's good for Team Freedom, Team America. And that's where I'm at with it. He's a smart guy. And I like that there is a place finally where we can say what we used to say pre Obama. When, like, I had friends that told me the moon landing was fake.
Yeah.
I never said, you can't say that, shut up, or report
Mhm.
them for misinformation. I would either laugh or I would say, tell me more. Same thing with 9/11. I had a lot of friends that told me 9/11, not good friends, but like I worked in music and entertainment. A lot of like people that were Bernie bro types all thought that 9/11 was an inside job. And I did not, but I never told them to shut up. I would always want them to tell me more. We'd talk. And I'd like calm down about building 7, whatever it is. But it's so funny because I now believe 9/11 was an inside job. Like once you've experienced what they did on January 6th, they literally brought us in, trapped us, gassed us, beat us, and charged us with assault on police officers. I defy anyone listening to this to find a picture of an injured police officer, right? They were beaten badly by us. Now, 4 Trump supporters died, 2 directly by police violence, and 2 were hit with the flashbang or gas canister things. And so, what happened really was Kent State meets Tiananmen Square, and the depth. I mean, the insurrection was a stolen election, and that was probably stolen because the Russian hoax stuff was all going to come out at Trump's reelection. But the cover up was January 6th. So now getting back to your original question on the bump, because this is important to me. Um, I like interacting with people. I like getting my story out there. And I hope that by doing podcasts, that more people will follow me, particularly on X, just because I go to Instagram before I kill Tony to see if there are any comedians trying to message me or if somebody's looking to do a podcast. My daughter set up a Give, Send, Go for us that got a little over $6,000, which is exactly the amount the judge fined us. She had a habit of that. You would not believe the probation stuff we went through, all for one single nonviolent being and remaining in a restricted area misdemeanor, which never even gets prosecuted by the federal government. But here's the thing, that it doesn't matter what the evidence is because it's DC juries, DC judicial system. But the then top law enforcement official in the country, the commander in chief, Donald Trump, said, now let us all march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol. So we had an invitation from the guy who's in charge of law. Plus, my husband and I had RSVP'd to a Stop the Steal rally and to an event that was being held on these restricted grounds. It was permitted. So, since when is the US Capitol not open on a Wednesday afternoon? It was all just based on a lie. And Tony, every time we would talk about it, he'd go, oh, yeah, allegedly. And I believe that Tony believed me. I just think that he would get demonetized if he didn't make me out to be giving misinformation. And I think the same thing happened when Joe Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe talked about me. It's like, oh, that lady got busted for saying she stormed the Capitol. And then Joe Rogan read from this fake news story that I breached police lines. The weekend before, I was at a Back the Blue concert, or not concert, excuse me, Back the Blue rally, as I did frequently, standing in front of our local police station. We Back the Blue, taking crap from all the nose ring, green haired girls and beta males. and the judge even like, and you say you support the police. That almost made me choke. And the judge said she was keeping me out of as many election cycles as possible. I was serving as president of my local government board when this happened. I had just been sworn in for my second term. And I took my oath of office so seriously, I went back for January 6th. I went ahead and ran for a third term because my strongest colleague on the board said he really needed me there. My heart wasn't in it, but I ran. But I wasn't allowed to campaign. I wasn't allowed to attend meetings. And I came in a long last place because all the local media printed the Justice Department press releases. I was a writer. The Daily Mail not only called me an insurrectionist, it said J6 rioter begs Trump for pardon. And I asked them to retract that because my lawyer told me to fill out the pardon application. I said, no, Trump said he's going to pardon me. I'm not going to pay a lawyer to do all that stuff because the pardon paperwork, you're supposed to say, I'm sorry and blah, blah, blah. No, I wanted a pardon from Trump, but I knew I was going to get it. And I did. First thing he did, just like he said. So that saved me probably a couple thousand. All in all, we were six figures into various legal fees. We had our main criminal lawyer. Then we had the two that represented us in the, like my husband was arrested in LA and me in Austin. Totally different experiences. Austin was cool. They treated me so well. Like even the bailiff putting on my leg iron said, I'm really sorry I have to do this. DC was directing the federal court how to behave there, but the judge said, I'm not going to read all this. You know what they're saying. And you retain these rights. They took my husband's DNA. You can't take people's DNA for a misdemeanor. They had him chained. He had to wait in the county jail with other felons, rapists, child molester, and he was chained together and walked in, a convict chain in front of my daughter. And the prosecutor wanted to read every charge, every statement of fact. They were all lies, everything in the statement of facts about what we did. They're just so full of lies. So anyway, the more people find out, and I think it's happening, I love Tulsi Gabbard. She's really releasing a lot. And eventually, I hope a pardon is like, okay, you did it, but we forgive you. I want vindication. I know President Trump wants vindication. This podcast, like I'm no good at the internet, all the social media stuff, but I saw your link tree, whatever it's called. So I started my own one and put up a link to my X account and my Instagram for whatever that's worth, and to our Give Send Go. And hopefully, I don't know how it's going to work out except for this, that everything I've been through in my life from, you know, pregnant teen living in the Salvation Army to pregnant drunk driver to, you know, being arrested and everything. I didn't even bore you with the details of the crap the federal government puts you through. They flag you, not just you can't fly, you can't submit your income tax. You get, like everything that they touch, they make miserable for you. And so all of that, I don't say to complain. I say it proudly because every bad thing that, and mostly self-inflicted, drinking, whatever it is, has made me a better person. Everything in my life has made me a better person. So whatever happens here, I'm already better off. Whoever thought that I would go from having my desk out in the hall in grade school to being on Joe Rogan's stage? Oh, and I didn't even tell you the most exciting part. For 2.5 years, I have been putting my name in the on the list to get to do the open mic at the small room at the mothership that goes on before Kill Tony. And I think the people that pick the names see me as just this old lady J6 novelty act, and they know everybody else from open mics regularly around downtown Austin. I finally got pulled for that, and I killed. And Adam Egget was in the back of the room, And when I went to pick up my phone and stuff off the table, he was sitting against the wall and he said, "That was a really good set." And
That's
I thanked
awesome.
him. And he said, "Do you live in Austin?" And I said, "I could."
That's so cool.
And,
That's a dream.
yeah, well, and then he said, "Well, how close are you?" I said, "I'm close enough. I'm like an hour and a half south of here." And he said, "Come back in 2 weeks at 7:15." So I get to skip the line. I went from never getting pulled to getting. They call them an audition, but it's they when they invite you back where you don't have to go on the list, it means that they think that maybe you're worth developing into somebody that works that. So hopefully I'll be funny a second time. It's not as easy as it sounds, but at my open mic that I do in New Braunfels on Tuesday, I asked the best comedians there what their favorite stuff of mine was. So I've got a good idea what I'm going to use.
So this was
Unfortunately,
recent then. This
yeah,
was
this happened
recent.
last Monday, and then no Kill Tony yesterday because he stayed in New York to do a Legion of Skanks thing. So Kill Tony is next Monday. The only time I've missed Kill Tony was when I was in jail on
Yeah.
house arrest. But I was going to miss this upcoming Monday um, because I had already made plans to go back to Santa Barbara. I have a speaking engagement there. And when Adam said, "Can you be back in 2 weeks?" I said, "Yes." You don't say no to opportunity. Then when I walk out, I'm like, 2 weeks, I'm going to be in Santa Barbara. So I was trying to think, can I talk? And I'm like, no, that is the biggest loser move in the world. Like, I told you I could be there, but could you change? So anyway, I'm like, fuck it. I still got about $1,000 left on my credit card where my credit card is maxed out. I'm like, I'm just, you wouldn't believe, but I'm making it happen. And I managed to get a round trip on Monday through Priceline and a cheap hotel in Austin. So I am flying from Santa Barbara to Austin to back to Santa Barbara Monday, just so I won't miss that thing with Adam.
That's so awesome. That is a comedian to the max. You're living it. That's so cool. It's like another life. You've had like four different lives at this point. That's so
Yeah,
insane.
well, fourth quarter. You're a sports guy. My
Yeah.
uniform is a little dirty and ragged, and I'm tired. But when are games won or lost? They are won or lost in the fourth quarter. So I keep telling my husband, who he was a great provider. We saved for our retirement, and then we had all this horrible stuff happen that caused us to be poor again, like in the early days of our marriage. But
Hmm.
I just keep reminding him because opposites attract. You have to keep trusting me, Rob. We're going to come out of this okay. And we're already, even if we have to live the way we're living for the rest of our lives, we've had an amazing life. But this is a fourth quarter and we're going to win this game. And I
Hell
believe
yeah.
eventually the truth will emerge. And even though you sign a stack of paper saying there's no way you can ever sue the government if you sign this, even if you've got great reason, I still think we're going to be able to get our attorney fees back, all those travel expenses. I mean, can you imagine driving a 10-year-old car back and forth between California and Texas every two
Not good.
months for, yeah. I mean, I would like at least just our basic expenses reimbursed. And I think that can happen, but it's not the first order of business. And a lot of J6ers complain and like, oh, it's been so hard. Nobody's helping us. And it's like, shut the F up. You got pardoned. Get out there and tell your story. Get the public on your side. Don't keep begging people to help you. Get out there and help yourself. Because once people know what happened to us, I was alive during Kent State. Even the law and order crowd was like, what? They opened fire on college students? Like it's uncool. And no matter what your political point of view is, there's only going to be like 20 to 30% of the country that does not demand that the J6ers are made whole. It's just going to take a while, and we've got to win the hearts and minds.
Yes. And then just to close things out with you, Karen Jones, what was your favorite time on Kill Tony out of your 5 appearances. I think my favorite set from you was on the show we talked about before we started recording on 677, uh, when you talked about Trump's Secret Service lady.
How crazy was that? Watching Trump almost get killed? But I was distracted watching it by how stupid the Secret Service girls looked. And then I thought, if only Trump would just grab them by the pussy and then hold them up and use them as human shields. They could have looked so cool.
And I remember I was like, oh, this is going to be another January 6th reference. It's going to be, you know, just par for the course for Karen Jones. And you said he should just grab her by the pussy. And I'm like, no way. It was so good. That's my favorite Karen Jones bit. What is your favorite time on the show?
We share that because, and I did take the mic out of the stand, and there's a lot of like little technical things that you have to get good at. But I already knew I didn't want to take the mic out of the stand. And so I had to get it at the right level. But there were 2 Secret Service chicks, and he should have grabbed them by the pussy and used them
So
as
good.
human shields. They could have looked
So good.
cool. But that joke came because we had an emergency inside circle conference right after the shot. We all met in my then house at my son's house. And we got on the phone with the people who have been following this, talking about it. And that's when I invented that joke. I'm like, yeah, we're making fun of how stupid the chicks look. Said he should just grab them by the pussy, use them as human shields. And what was good about that, to me, the joke worked, but I also am always trying to, help my team. And my team had unforced error by saying grab them by the pussy way back in, whenever. And it kind of it took some of the damage out of that statement also. Then the other part of that, here's me being brief. I loved that joke, and I loved my interaction with Jordan Peterson. I wish
guy.
Kim Congdon, if I could have made Kim Congdon and Tyler Fisher disappear, it would have been the perfect thing. Nothing against them. There are other times and other tables where that would have been okay. But I love my interaction with Jordan Peterson, partly based on something you prefaced your question with, the same old J6 thing. I promise you, January 6th is an interesting part of my life, but is not by any means the most interesting. I have so many wild tales to tell. I live downtown. I've had Michael Jackson pull into my driveway. I've had David Crosby bring my dog home. I live in the center of a very cheechy tourist town that used to be just the western part of Santa Barbara County. Reagan Ranch, Neverland Ranch. A lot of movie stars, a lot of rock singers live there. And then a lot of people like us. My husband was born there. So I have this really interesting life above and beyond January 6th. And Jordan Peterson asked me questions about my life, not about January 6th. And that was the first time I got to talk about, having a child while living at the Salvation Army. Kinky Friedman wrote a song called Resurrection. The title cut opens with my story about living in the Salvation Army. And Willie Nelson is singing backup vocals. I mean, so yeah, J6 is interesting, but for a ordinary person, I've had an extraordinary life. And so I have a lot of material, and I like moving past the J6 stuff.
Yeah, and I thought that was great, and that was a major reason why that was memorable. I know I said I was going to end it there, but you saying Michael Jackson pulled into your driveway, I got to ask you about that. What's the story behind that?
Well, I produced music shows, and I was a songwriter in one of these former lives we talk about. And we live at the only 4-way stop in downtown Santa Ynez. And everything else is business. It was deemed business district, commercial district in the 50s. But because this house has been in my husband's family for over 100 years, we're that funny house. You see cartoons of a house in the middle of a metropolitan area and an old man shaking his fist. That's kind of us. And so a musician friend of mine, Joey Oso, was out in our driveway. My husband always changed oil and helped wash cars for musicians who were visiting. So they were out in the driveway. I was in the house. They came walking in, and my husband said, yeah, some black lady just pulled into the driveway and said, "Where's the cowboy bar?" And Joey, my friend, laughed. He goes, "That wasn't a lady. That was Michael Jackson." My husband is so like detached from anything cultural. He's got an engineering brain. He worked in automation. But it's funny, what Michael Jackson was looking for was the Maverick Saloon, which is the cowboy themed bar that's a very well-known bar in Santa Ynez. So that was just funny to me that my husband thought Michael Jackson was a black lady driving, I think it was an Escalade or something, some large white SUV with a passenger in it. I think he was trying to take his passenger to the Maverick, just showing off a little of the local flavor. So anyway, just because of location, so many people, and then we would do an annual event during the historical like old Santa Ynez Day every year, parade and all the fair stuff that goes with that. Well, our house is right there downtown. So we always threw up a stage and invited my musician friends to come play. And it grew into a very large, popular event. And what was to be the 25th anniversary of Jones Fest, as it was called, COVID lockdown. So it ended on the 24th. I haven't lived in that house full time since January 6th. And I haven't been to that house in a couple of years. My daughter is like, "Mom, you're not going to like it." Yeah, it's going to be tough. My husband's been living alone there, and he's got things set up the way he likes them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little crazy, but I look forward to it.
Yeah. Speaking of your kids, and again, before we close this thing out, a joke that you told that did not get the reaction it deserved. I thought that your joke about how you didn't want your kids to be gay because it was going to make you look like a bad mom, your extra joke, that was fantastic. I thought that was a great joke. Did not get the laughs or the respect from Tony, by the way. I really like that joke.
Well, you know what was funny to me? I thought it did, and this is one thing all the comics say, like, you didn't hear the laughs on the show, but that did really well with the audience. And I saw a look on Tony's face. I can't tell exactly what point, but when I watched the show, where I saw Tony's wheels turn, where he thought, "Oh, maybe she can really do other jokes." And that's how I think I ended up getting picked to do the thing at the mothership. Is finally I'm being recognized as somebody who is not a novelty J6 thing. So it may have come off that way, but I felt that did better than my J6 getting raped while I was in prison. And I did go back and forth because Tony has told me last time I was up on the Jordan Peterson one, he was like, or maybe it was a different one, but I think it was the Jordan Peterson one. It's like, why do you keep pussyfooting around? You need to lean into that J6 stuff and do more material on that. I guess it was probably a couple ones before the Jordan Peterson, but I did my Diddy was arrested for being their stuff, but I really like my not wanting my kids to be gay. I talk about that, different versions of it at open mics, and it does surprisingly well. It does better. I do some jokes, and some of them are really good, but is a tough one. But I keep trying to do good jokes. But the not wanting my kids to be queer, actually, I did a version of that last night that went over pretty well, even in a small, not well attended open mic. So that is a good one. And it's 100% true. I did tell my kids that. And that is another thing about my jokes and why I think that I'm going to be able to develop to be an even better comedian is because people want genuine right now. And a lot of the stuff I talk about, people say, "Why isn't that in your act?" When I was talking to Jake from Joke Wrld about being the only drunk girl or only pregnant girl in my drunk driving class, he's like, "Why isn't that part of your bit?" or me talking about I hate my husband's guts. People say, why isn't that in your bit? Like there's just so much stuff from real life. And in real life, I told my kids, hey, I don't want to know if you're gay. And if you tell me you're gay, definitely not going to be my favorite kid.
Yeah, I know. It was great. And I'm glad to hear that got over well with the audience, because in the video when I watched it back, it didn't sound like the laughs were there, but it's good to hear that they were there, because I was laughing in my how I watch the show, because I cover it obviously, so I watch it in bed at 9 p.m. with my fiance who works in the mornings, and I literally will laugh and wake her up. And that was one where I literally laughed so hard she had to get out of bed and go to the couch. So you started a little bit of a fight, Karen Jones, between me and my fiance. You made me laugh so hard. But thank you so much for your time, Karen Jones. Where can the people find you if they want to follow you?
The very best place is at Granny Snakebite, just like it sounds, on X. I was Snakebite Jones, my original Twitter account, but I came back as Granny Snakebite because now I have all these grandkids, and they all call me Grandma Snakebite or Snakebite. My son Alex instructed them to do that. Just I'm not mean, but I'm tough.
And we can all read that. We can all read that from the screen. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you check all my links down below. You can like me on Facebook at Treeb Talks. Follow me on Twitter at Treeb Talks, or follow me on TikTok at Treeb Talks Clips. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.